Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers are starting to pile up some minutes without LeBron James. Have they solved their no LeBron on the floor problem? And when exactly is LeBron coming back? We'll talk about that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. We post this thing for you. It goes up in the wee hours of the morning. So if you're a night owl, you can just dive right in. You don't have to wait until you get up in the morning and start your commute. I want to let you know as well that this episode of Locked On Lakers is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's also an unofficial community center. Big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. All right, so a few things we want to talk about, Andy. You know, we mentioned it on Thursday's show. Really spent actually a fair amount of time on kind of this weird place the Lakers are in, where they don't have their rotation. They aren't going to have their rotation for a little while, and figuring out what can be accomplished in this time, what's real and what isn't. So we'll get back into a little bit of that.
I mean, you can extend it, Brian, a little bit further and question the idea of what's been accomplished, period, since the moment training camp opened.
Yeah.
I mean, this has actually been a recurring issue for the Lakers since the moment they actually started doing,
like, literally, Trevor
basketball.
Ariza didn't even have a moment on the floor.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it has been completely, even by the standards of lacking continuity that we knew they would have by definition of the roster being turned over as much. Good God, there's been no continuity.
None. And it is not a small thing. So we'll talk a little bit about that, a little bit about Anthony Davis and his performance so far this year. But the big news still, LeBron James, which gets to this continuity question, missed the last two games.
Also gets to a Squid Game question.
Yeah, didn't get to they didn't play in San Antonio, didn't play in Oklahoma City. The Lakers didn't practice on Thursday. I guess they perfected everything. They don't need to be out on the floor. So they don't, no new news on LeBron coming out of El Segundo on Thursday. They are going to shoot around on Friday. We'll presumably get some information before the Lakers take the floor. But anyway, how concerned are you? You know, hopefully he plays Friday. If not Friday, he plays Sunday. It doesn't seem like a super long-term thing, but 3 games, 4 games into the season, LeBron already sitting out. It makes you uncomfortable. I think it makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before with LeBron, and I mean, this is something that I have had concerns with LeBron since the moment they signed him. I remember one of the first pieces that I wrote for The Athletic back when we were regularly writing for them was like a look at LeBron's minutes and just like how insane the mileage that he had tracked to that point. You know, this was now almost 4 seasons ago, combined with the responsibility that he has. Like, what he's doing right now at this stage of his career, there's no template. Like, it is without precedent. And as much as LeBron has seemed like this superhuman cyborg that spends like $1 million plus on his body every year and is in tuned as much with himself as any athlete you're ever going to see, it doesn't matter who you are. At some point, your body will stop cooperating. Like, you know, and you can make whatever concessions you want. You know, you can put a hell of an offensive line in front of you if you're Tom Brady, but every athlete, whoever goes through this, their body at some point says, either I can't cooperate or I can't heal up the way I used to. I'm just more vulnerable in general than I used to be. And like you said, Brian, this could be something where LeBron misses 2 games. He plays on Friday. He looks like LeBron, and it was a little bit sore, and they want to make sure that they're being cautious.
Right. You don't, 5 games into the year, you don't want to turn a 3-game injury or 3 games of soreness or whatever it might be. You know, is it the playoffs? Does he play? He was doing on-court work before the game in Oklahoma City. He is not incapacitated. He's not wearing a boot. But that said, you don't want to turn something into a lingering injury. But that, I think what you talk about with healing time is really the crux of it, because 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, do you need to take that into the equation? Like, we need to give LeBron enough time to really get this thing back as close to 100% as possible so it doesn't become a nagging thing that costs 10 games in March when when it's higher leverage and more important. I don't think that consideration is there. It is that healing time that I think has caught up to LeBron more than any. I don't think his body is necessarily more brittle now than certainly other guys around the league. I mean, he's one of many people on this roster to be missing time. But what used to separate LeBron, I think, was not only just the inability to seemingly hurt him, but that if he did get hurt, it took like an hour and a half and he was back on the floor. That's gone now. So if there is a legit ding, if there's something to worry about, you have to factor in maybe we need to give him a game or two or three to make sure it doesn't linger. And in the meantime, that impacts everything because he's LeBron James.
Yeah, and this is a team that really needs LeBron, like the guy that even with Russell Westbrook, everything is ultimately centered around LeBron, like in terms of how the operation is going to actually work, which, makes sense. He's LeBron. It doesn't matter if like the offense technically runs through at times Anthony Davis or he is the primary scoring option or as much playmaking usage, all of that stuff, the ball being in Russell Westbrook's hands. At the end of the day, the sun is still LeBron, and the team rotates around that sun. And without him being there, like beyond the fact that the team obviously suffers, the idea of trying to build towards something and actually brick by brick building that foundation of what you ultimately want the house to be in this metaphor, you're falling behind schedule. It's like when you're living near like a house that's actually being built and either it's rained for a while or I don't know, like the local 402 went on strike,
whatever it is. But you're just like, there's not construction going on here, and there should be. And I know that means construction will be happening in the summertime when I wanted it to be done because we're going to we got a big wedding plan for the outside, and I don't want there's a finite amount of time the Lakers have to do this, and the point isn't that they're already there. The other thing, though, and this gets to the next thing I want to get into, but like the reason this is important is because there are non-LeBron minutes that exist in the context of LeBron being part of the lineup. Let's go to the break, and then I want to ask you the other question, though, which is, do you think the Lakers are any closer now to addressing their non-LeBron minutes problem that they've had over the last couple years than they were before with the addition of Russell Westbrook and all the other stuff they've done? We'll do that next.
This episode of Locked On Lakers brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. They've always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where families, friends come together to reconnect. It's a place you always look forward to stopping at after a long road trip just to rest your legs, refuel. Win or lose, it's the place where the home or the away team can go to recharge. Like I remember, Brian, Little League games, soccer games, our grandma Nini, she would always take us to McDonald's. You'd sit down with those cheeseburgers or a McChicken with the fries. You always got to get the fries. And even if you don't get the McNuggets, you make sure you get the McNugget sauces because the fries dipped in any single one of those sauces, always awesome. So head to your local McDonald's, refuel, reconnect. Did somebody say Locked On Lakers watch party? I'm loving it.
Okay, so I don't think it's a secret, Andy, that the Lakers have generally not played well over the last couple seasons. They have suffered from a physical standpoint when LeBron James sits. I'm not talking about when he doesn't play at all, like the stretch where he was hurt last year and all that. I mean when he's in the lineup and resting.
Yeah.
These last couple games, plus what we've seen, in the first, I guess it was 3 that he played 3, missed 2. Are the Lakers any closer to getting a good solution to that problem? Because that was a lot of the impetus for bringing in Westbrook, was both to keep LeBron fresher, but also make those minutes, hopefully more of them. They want to keep his minutes down, in the low 30s, make those minutes more productive.
I mean, honestly, I don't know. Like, I actually don't know the answer. Like, if you look at just the results so far, you would say that the answer is no. But the reality is, it's not just that they've been missing LeBron. They've been missing Talen Horton-Tucker. They've been missing Trevor Ariza. They've been missing Kendrick Nunn. They've been missing Wayne Ellington on top of LeBron there. So, like, when you're talking about the big lineup, for example, LeBron, for better and worse, has been one of this team's best three-point shooters, or at least he's had these periods where he has been. He has been so far this season. So when you're missing LeBron on top of all the skill sets, that make him arguably the best player in the league, you're missing the floor stretching ability in him that would offset some of the issues that come with playing the larger lineup. Also, with these other guys that you're missing, the team is a weird combination of really big and really small, sometimes at the same time. But
Uh-huh.
you don't get to run the lineups and sort of the floor combinations and size combinations that, at least on paper, make this team at its best. Like, some of the lineups Frank Vogel's trotting out, he's not, as much as I've said before that I think it doesn't really matter what the scenario is. He's going to go with a too big lineup because that's just
Well,
what
at least
he
this,
wants.
I mean, and we've seen numbers, and we may throw them out again today. Anthony Davis is playing more center this year than he has
Yes.
certainly last year, and even going back to 2 years ago. He's playing more minutes at
Yeah.
center. He's not starting there, and it's not as many minutes as people would like.
Right. But I was going to say, as much as something like that, I think is just as much a Frank Vogel philosophical worldview of what he wants in basketball, leveraging that size of the rim, all that stuff. Some of the other lineups people complain about, it's like, he doesn't have much other choice. Like, if
No.
you're going to have guys actually rotating in and out of a lineup, and the guys who are available, some of these lineups are going to be really wonky, and there's no other way to do it. And because of that, it's difficult to gauge how much of that is the drop off with Westbrook running the show is as dramatic as it was with Schroeder running the show or Rondo running the show, whoever, versus, no, this is kind of an effed up lineup.
Well, yeah,
And
and they have, like you say, it goes basically from like a bunch. You can go 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", and then you can stop at LeBron, and then you're basically at like 6'9" or 7 foot. Like there's not a lot in between. You're and so I
I mean, when it comes to mobility, too, in all
right.
honesty, Carmelo Anthony, who is like the 1'6'8", 6'9" guy, he is much closer in mobility to a center. And I mean, one of the,
And not one of the Mark Eaton types, not,
yeah,
not like
yes.
the modern,
Yeah, no,
stringy,
no, he is not JaVale, like, that gazelle that can get up and down the court. I mean,
no,
he's more like Carmelo
not on
Ostertag.
that side of the floor.
Yeah.
It's when he's got to react to what you're doing.
Right.
No,
So I'm saying, like, I mean, really, even the guy that is, I guess, sort of, if you want to talk yourself into it, that kind of bridge between the bigs and the smalls, Melo,
no,
functionally, he's another big.
right. And that gets me to the next question I want to ask that I know we wanted to talk about. What can we take away? Like, what is there that we can understand or look at or see as an opportunity or things that you take? Like, it's a good day to kind of, I think, sort of step back and look at where they are because they missed some time with LeBron, because so many guys, and it's so confusing. And I want to kind of be able to draw at least vague pictures of what I think I'm seeing, but it's very difficult. Like, what sticks out to you at this point?
It's a hard question. I mean, one of the things that does stick out to me is my concern that even with the team at full strength, there's going to be a pretty definitive ceiling to how good defensively they can be.
I'm getting to there.
I
I
mean,
was more optimistic 5 games ago than I am now.
right. And again, the caveat of some of the guys that they are missing, they matter. Obviously, LeBron being unavailable, and I think also LeBron really deciding to crank it up, that's obviously a plus for this team. Certainly Trevor Ariza, even if he can play 16 minutes a night, depending on how you implement those 16,
They matter.
they can matter. Kendrick Nunn is relatively a better defender
Mhm.
than some of the guards that they currently have available. So that's going to be helpful. And I know it hasn't been evidenced yet, but the team has talked up Talen Horton-Tucker's potential a lot defensively. And if nothing else, he at least adds some length that they desperately need.
And I was about to say some of these guys too, while not great individual defenders, also give they're all good at different things. Certain guys are, certain bad defenders are still good at certain things. THT actually ranked out, I think, pretty well if you look at some of the numbers of like on ball defense. And so it's the away from the, like, there's certain things guys do well, even if they have deficiency in other places. The problem with the Lakers defensive rotation right now and going into Friday's game, I believe they're 25th in defensive efficiency. I was somewhat surprised they were that high.
There's only 30 teams in the league.
I know the number. I'm aware of how many teams there are. It puts Frank Vogel in a position where he doesn't even have the choice of suboptimal options. Like he's got to, I don't want to. He's not an idiot. He doesn't want to put Rondo, Westbrook, Melo out on the floor together. He knows that's not going to be a good defensive lineup. But when you're short as many guys in the rotation, and you also do need to score, like sometimes, you have to do weird things. And so it will provide the optionality of avoiding your worst options, even if Kendrick Nunn isn't a great defender or THT isn't a great defender. And like you say, relative to some of the other options, they are better.
Kendrick Nunn has largely been like a defensive. He's been basically a neutral defender.
Yeah.
The issues that he had, I mean, just so it's clear, in Miami in terms of staying in the rotation were pretty much all defensive, but that was also a really, really high-end defensive team, high-end defensive culture. So some of that could, again, be just relatively speaking, he could not keep up with that group. Relatively speaking, and take from this whatever you want.
Right to the top of the class here.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I'm not saying this to provide like, Pollyanna comfort to people, but at the same time, though, that does potentially mean relative improvement.
Right. That's my question, though. This is what I spent a lot of time thinking about after the game on Wednesday night's game is how much does having those options back lift you? Does that take you from 25 to 20? Does it take you, because that's not good enough. Does it take you from 25 to 15? That would be 15, 10, 12, something. Because the other thing is, I think they're going to be capable of being pretty good, not great, but pretty good when you have AD fully engaged all the time and LeBron fully engaged all the time. The problem is, particularly with LeBron out, I think a lot of, there's a lot of talk about AD's shot selection in the second half of Wednesday's game, where he did stick a little bit more outside. He was dominating Oklahoma City inside early.
Yeah, but later on, I've got a few numbers that I dug up with.
Right, but
AD.
part of that second night of a back-to-back, big minutes in both, carrying a gigantic offensive. I think he got tired, and so I think they can be at their best defensively when AD and LeBron are at their best defensively. But you can't ask either one of those guys to play at that level and carry an offense for 82 games. At least I think there is a danger in that. So,
I mean, here's the thing, though. You may have asked them to do that, whether you meant to or not, depending on how the roster shakes out. That might actually be the ask. And look, you know what?
That's been one of my concerns.
But here's the thing, though, and this is where I would say whether or not you think that was a bad ask, it's the ask, and I don't have a lot of sympathy. That ask may not have been there if LeBron and Anthony Davis had not pushed hard to bring in Russell Westbrook, because you would have had a lot more defensive support if you hadn't had to make that deal. You might still have KCP, you might still have Alex Caruso, or more options for substitutes. And I'm not looking to relitigate any of that. I mean, at this point,
this is the danger.
This is the deal.
You're trying to fill in with one.
LeBron and AD are not stupid. These guys know the game really well. It's really clear they wanted Westbrook there for that offensive lift. And I don't blame them, because the last couple of years, there has been a hell of a lot placed on those guys offensively. So I understand where they're coming from. But if they potentially overestimated.
Well, and do you trade? That was my concern. We've covered is like, it doesn't do tons of good to gain a lot protecting LeBron offensively if you make him do more
So we'll
defensively.
see.
So I got to figure it out. You have some numbers on 80. There's a kind of a fun debate going on Lakers Twitter Thursday afternoon about kind of how Anthony Davis is playing. You've got some numbers we can kick around with that. We'll do it next.
Locked on Lakers, brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar ever. Bars covered in 100% chocolate, soft, easy to chew, and healthy. They're great for health conscious people. They're low calorie, low sugar, high protein, high fiber. They're great for the keto crowd. And as always, they taste awesome. You got 12 original flavors, including raspberry, coconut, almond, salted caramel, new flavors, including cherry barcia, lemon almond cheesecake, cookies and cream. They're perfect for someone like me who just loves really cool, different, unique taste combinations. So go to builtbar.com.
Bench 600 pounds.
Yeah, I bench 600 pounds of Built Bars.
Built Bars.
That's
yes.
Actually, I do the workout and then I eat my workout. It's really efficient. It's a high per. So go to builtbar.com, use the promo code LOCK15. You get 15% off your first order. Again, promo code LOCKed15, 15% off at builtbar.com.
All right, basketball, it's back. It's better than ever, and there's a new web interface for the start of the basketball season with more props, odds, and lines ever before at BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one spot for the basketball and football action this season. Head on to our new updated or mobile, desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code Locked On when you get that big bonus. So from basketball, football, baseball, the World Series going on, NHL, boxing, UFC, down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 seasons. Bet online, it's the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet online, where the game starts. So there's an interesting little, I mentioned before the break, like a little interesting mini debate kind of people are following on Lakers Twitter. Darius Soriano, our friend at, now writing at Silver Screen and, part of the Lakers Film Room podcast, and Jason Timpf and some other people that people know from Lakers Twitter, just sort of about AD and the defense and how he's playing. And, we talked about shot selection and all this other stuff. I got no problem with what Anthony Davis is doing. I think LeBron has been a little bit spotty and, obviously now is hurt. Westbrook's performance has been all over the place and mostly negative, if we're being honest. And then, the supporting cast has had its ups and downs. I have no problem with what I've seen so far from Anthony Davis this year, really on both sides of the ball. He's being asked to cover a tremendous amount.
Yes.
Defensively in terms of shortcomings of this team. One guy cannot fix what the Lakers have as a problem. Even one guy who can be as dominant as AD is. And like they won that Memphis game in part because he was playing at a DPOY level and then some for a long stretch of time while also playing very well offensively. That's not something that's really sustainable without a little bit more of a supporting infrastructure defensively, game in and game out. It's just not. Giannis has good infrastructure around him in Milwaukee. Rudy Gobert has that in Utah. These guys can perform that way in part because the rest of the team's pretty good too.
Yeah. I mean, but the flip side is A, this is not supposed to be the entire team. B, just this is what's being asked of you right now. I mean, like when you are a superstar, part of being a superstar is dealing with the periodic unfair burdens. And right now there's an unfair burden being placed on Anthony Davis, but that's the gig. Like that sure. is the burden when it comes to being not just a superstar, but a superstar on a team that has legitimate title aspirations that, again, like we talked about earlier in the show, has been completely retooled in part because that is what you wanted. So
right, and to your point, AD isn't just trying to be a superstar. He thinks of himself as one of the ultra elite players in the league. I'm not stretching for sympathy for the guy.
No,
I'm
but
saying,
I mean,
like, particularly on that side of the ball, he's not. All I'm saying is sort of to Laker fans, he's not the problem. I think Davis has performed very well over the course of the season. I think the more interesting question, I know you've got some numbers on this, is what is he doing on the other side? Because last year was a really bad offensive season as much as anything. And is he doing things now that should make people more encouraged about how he's performing offensively? I think the answer there is also yes, with some could be betters, maybe.
I
judging by your face.
Well, okay. The caveat being, I think Anthony Davis, just so it is established, is having a really, really good season so far. On balance, he's been quite good. So I want to make sure that even though I know nobody's going to listen, That actually is the marker that I'm laying down. Anthony
No,
Davis is
be
really
more
good.
specific. Many people listen. Nobody's going to hear. There's a difference.
I guess so. I mean, if
I've got.
if you are willing to process the background noise that is my voice right now, hear me saying Anthony Davis is playing really well. That being said, though, I have had some issues. I believe we've talked about it during different shows with some of AD's shot selection, and I still would like to see him get closer to the basket more often, have more shots in the paint, closer to the rim, fewer of them in the long mid range area. And I've contended for a while, as of you, that a lot of this has nothing to do with whether or not he is slated at center, slated at power forward, who's on the floor with him. It can matter, but I think more than anything else, what matters are AD's choices. And looking up some numbers, Cleaning the Glass, really good data site, has him playing 55% of his minutes so far at center, 45% at power forward. It's the largest percentage by far of him at the five since joining the Lakers. A lot of this can be semantic-y. I get it, devil in the details. But, regardless, he's been playing a lot at the five. His percentages of what they define as long mid-range shots, in this particular case, 13% frequency. That's his highest ever as a Laker. And again, he is not just playing more minutes as a center this season. He is taking most of those shots as a center, more of them than ever as a center than the last 2 years. Per Basketball Reference, nearly 19% of his shots have been from 16 feet out to the three-point line, highest of his Laker career. Just under 11% of his shots this year have been dunks. It's the lowest since last season, which was the lowest since the 2017 season. He's got 10 dunks so far this season. To put it in perspective, DeAndre Jordan has 9 in about a third of the minutes. Again, there can be context to this stuff.
And to be fair too, that's 16 to 24, basically 16 feet to the 3-point line. He's shooting over 50%. So,
right.
I mean, it's been a very good shot for him.
It may be a good shot, but it also is a shot that for him that comes and goes. And I also think at times can be indicative of habits and habits that I know both of us have not liked during his time with the Lakers. He's got his lowest percentage of assisted twos or threes of his entire career, the lowest percentage of shooting fouls committed against him, that the ones that he's drawing as a Laker, just under 11%. It puts him in the 34th percentile. Again, lowest of his Laker career, although it's actually been trending in that direction since he became a Laker. He is taking more threes so far this season when he's considered a center than a power forward. So again,
let's stop there for a second, because I don't have a problem with that for some reason. It's weird. And this is actually consistent. AD has been very spotty from 10 to 16, that short mid range. And then, when you step out a little bit further, top of the free throw arc and all that kind of stuff, he's much more effective. I don't know why. It just is. Some guys are better when they take a step and a half back from the free throw line. They shoot there. Dwight did that. It seemed to help him.
Nick Van Exel shot it from half court.
Right. And if for whatever reason it works, Godspeed. The 3-point thing, I understand why people still talk about it as something that is important and that he needs to take 3-point shots. I am beginning to wonder why, because they do not go in, and they're going in this year at an even lower rate than normal. I think he's 2 for 14 this season.
He is at 14% on the season.
Yeah, two for 14. That's really bad. And it's not that this is out of character for him. This is what it always has been. He's never been any better than a 1 of 3 guy, and usually he's been worse.
Dude, 1 of 3?
That's a
career high.
A career high. That is what I meant that literally. He has never really been better.
I just want to make sure people understand that. That's like a high watermark. AD
correct.
And
usually it's way lower.
Yeah.
And so where I think, Anthony Davis's ability to stretch the floor is critical, I think, to his game. I think his inside game benefits from being able to credibly take that 20-footer, that 18-footer. It doesn't benefit from him taking apparently the 24-footer, whatever. It's almost like how Lakers, people who are great shooters before they get to LA step inside Staples Center. Something about crossing that threshold of the 3-point line. Just because he looks pretty decent taking them, they do not go in. They did not go in last year, and he doesn't need to be taking 3 or 4 of those a game. I am perfectly content with that 20-footer because it's a great shot for him and it opens up a lot of other stuff. But there, I would say, it does is the part of the offensive game that I would nitpick with. But overall, as we wrap up here, I think he's been more decisive. I think what we saw in the preseason with a more decisive,
He's
more
been more decisive.
aggressive,
I think, though, sometimes he's more
stronger.
decisive staying away from the rim.
Maybe, but I like I said, Oklahoma City, I think was a lot of fatigue in the second half, but I'm okay with it. If it's the threes that bother me, it's not the long range twos. That's just me.
All right. I mean, all in all, though, I mean,
I'd
the
like to see
numbers.
more dunks would be good. I'm on
I
board
mean,
with
just
that.
look. I think individually you could nitpick or contextualize any of the stats that I brought out. I
Mhm.
think, though, when you take them all together, on top of what we've seen watching AD, not just the 5 games this season, but the entirety of his career, but certainly his Laker career, I just think a lot of this is really on him.
Oh,
And as
that I
much as
agree with.
as much as the
Absolutely.
floor
It's not
combinations
positionality.
matter, as much
Absolutely.
as who you have out there can affect spacing, who's
Mhm.
at the rim, who can't go away from the rim,
Yep. No, I
all
agree.
that stuff.
I
A
agree.
lot of this is just AD, go do it.
Yep. I
Just
agree.
go do it.
Decisively, whatever it is, aggressively go get the shot that you're looking for and don't settle for the one that you don't. Even if it's a shot that you and I would be like, "Ooh, I like that." But if it's the shot that you want, it's that decisive action. I agree with you. It's not
Yeah.
based on
I mean, some of this is just,
position.
I think it's what he wants. And
Yeah.
at times I don't think it's what he should want, but we'll
Yeah,
see.
we'll see. All right, so we'll be back on Monday, hopefully talking about 2 games that LeBron James has played, 2 games that the Lakers have won, but we will see. I don't think anybody feels good about anything right now based on what happened on Wednesday in Oklahoma City. But you, listener, viewer, should feel good about heading into a weekend, Halloween, have some fun. If you got kids, take them out trick or treating. Everybody have a good time. Be safe. We'll see you on Monday.